be on top of the trends evolving in terms of negotiating client agreements. We are seeing an increase in demands for exclusivity amongst agencies. We see creative attempts at designing billing language in the contract. So be careful about that, and make certain that you've got a legal toolkit that is consistent and that you take a look at from time to time to be certain it reflects your actual practices as an agency. Every agency, there are key legal documents they should have in their toolkit handy and ready, and there should be a very small team of people in every agency who's responsible for making certain those contracts get signed and that they evolve when they need to evolve.
Tim, I don't know about today's episode, if I'm honest with you, because, you told me, you're like, hey, guess what? We're going to interview a lawyer today. And I'm like, woohoo. Sounds so exciting. Tim, tell me why we're talking to a lawyer today, please.
This is an exciting legal conversation because so many people in our space, they have this vision for an agency and they've been able to translate that through growing the agency. And the legal foundation that you're built on is just so important for you to be able to scale that agency. And it's also tremendously helpful. And Sharon's one of those people that understands our space. And I think that's critical. We've been with some larger law firms throughout our 11-year journey here, and they didn't understand. So you're constantly explaining what you do so they can figure out the end. Not Sharon. She understands our space because she's worked in it for a while, and it makes it a much easier, better, more productive conversation. So I'm really looking forward to today.
Well, when you frame it like that, I guess I'll be here. I guess I'll interview. I guess I'll talk to her. I'm not that nervous anymore. So if you listeners out there that have been tapping into agencies, agency talk, then we should be able to say this. I will promise that Tim is going to deliver on this guest and that this will be the best conversation you've heard from a lawyer on Tim's name and Tim's reputation. We could do that. Without further ado, please welcome.
I appreciate that about you putting my reputation in it. But listen, it's well worth staying, believe me.
Yeah. Well, friends, enjoy hearing from our friend and Tim's lawyer. Welcome Sharon to Agency Talk. Tim, I am, first of all, thrilled that you brought on somebody who you know, love, and trust in the legal sense, because when you said there's a lawyer coming today, I was, admittedly scared. Is Sharon going to come in and look through my life and say I've got a lot of blind spots? Sharon, welcome, first of all. And hearing Tim talk about you with such a high regard is amazing. But what was it? Why are you more rounded out? Why is it not just legalese and that's it? What is it about the marketing space that got you into that, or why do you care at all? That's the question.
Well, I think it's for a couple of reasons. I'm an IP lawyer by training, by education. It's what I spent the early years of my practice life learning when I was in big law. My current firm is not my first firm. I have had partnerships that were really more business focused law firms. And so I think I have an appreciation in general for owners of entrepreneurial companies, the way they think, the way they communicate, what keeps them up at night. And so through the years, my IP experience led me to working with a lot of marketers in general. And that sort of narrowed down the funnel and led me to working with a lot of agencies and agency owners. And I got more active in their community and sort of understanding. And a lot of them, there's an intersection between IP issues that they deal with because they create a ton of intellectual property every day. And the business issues. And so I started learning more about their industry from them. And then I guess the last thing I'd say about it is I'm a huge believer in blue ocean strategy. And I think that there wasn't really anybody, and there are very few people today even helping these small and mid-sized independently owned agencies. And so they need advocacy. They need someone who's going to help them be proactive about managing their legal affairs, who isn't going to feel like a big obstructionist. And I think that's the number one reason why agencies don't want to be proactive about legal is They're too afraid they're going to get told no. They're afraid of the cost. And so for all those reasons, it's just an awesome niche. And I truly believe that marketing and advertising, it's a driver. And I've said this to Tim in the past, it drives our economy, it drives our culture. And so I love working with other business owners who are, on the cutting edge of that all the time.
What a timely conversation, because I'll say this, something you just mentioned before we kind of jump into very specific questions that Tim and I have, and we're very interested in asking you. I think that there's a lot of apprehension in our space. And maybe we should start there and where you think some of that comes from, because you said cost and you said getting the word no, which sounds really scary too. Are a lot of the conversations you're having with agencies, are some of that apprehension locked in the fact that they don't want to look at that part of that it's a big mess and they just don't want to look at it, they want to kick it under the bed? What do you think a lot of that apprehension comes from?
I think it's a few things. I think agency owners in general tend to have a higher tolerance for risk, and that probably extends not only to their financial decisions, their business decisions, but also the way they want to run their agencies from a legal perspective, and the amount they're comfortable with sort of leaving unknown. So that's a little bit, part of it is the DNA of a marketing agency owner, I think, or maybe entrepreneurs in general. I don't know. I think the other part of it is you all get into the business to deal with that stuff. The operations, the legal, the finance, that's the least sexy part about what you do every day. And frankly, you don't want to spend too much time on it. It's just kind of, we do have some agency owners who like the operational and the executional side of the business. They leave the innovating and the creating, to key team members, because that's just their zone of genius. But in general, agency owners, they like being in the thick of sales. They like being in the thick of marketing, of creative development. That's why they started agencies. And many of them are accidental business owners. They didn't intend to be agency owners. They just that just sort of became their path. So I think for all those reasons, the legal is just something that's not appealing to them. Secondly, I think all of us are used to lawyers who don't really speak business. We speak legalese, and that is a turnoff, I think, for agency owners, because they want to understand the contracts that they are presenting to their clients. They want to know in plain English what their risks are. They want to understand how to explain risk to their clients in plain English, who are all marketers, by the way. They're not usually dealing directly with lawyers within their client organizations. So that's the second part of it. It's a foreign language, in some respects. And third of all is they don't like to be slowed down. And lawyers tend to look like obstructions, because they're the ones who are slowing everything down, making sure that everybody's thought everything through. And that's not fun all the time. So there's a little of that. And then the cost. I mean, a lot of our time is spent explaining to agency owners and helping them understand that legal is actually a revenue generator for your agency, not an investment, not a cost. It is a way to maximize the value of the contracts that you sign, to leverage your intellectual property for the highest and best use so that it's profitable for you as an agency. So we're not really cultured to think of legal as a profit center. And so a lot of our conversations around trying to help them understand that.
Wow. We have very specific questions to Tim, and Tim's going to ask his first one, but can we just pause for a second and say, legal is a profit center is so outside of any way that I've ever heard it actually described, that I think it's worth a pause, and I hope everybody heard that. That's like a mic drop moment, and we'll have one of those. But let's get into those specifics. Tim, I know you have like some things that are burning, because a lot of our agencies, Sharon, are asking specific stuff, ADA. There's a lot around contracts, and maybe there's some specific things while we have you here that we can kind of help our listeners navigate a bit.
The way that the entrepreneurial nature of agency owners, and speed is one of those things, real language. I mean, we get called out when we speak to our clients in CPMs and PPCs and in SEOs, you got to speak real language. And an example of that is our when we first started, our MSA that was constructed by a pretty good firm was 70 pages long. And I called up Sharon and I said, "You got to get me out of this shit because first of all, I wouldn't read this. It's just too much, right? And if you have to dig that deep, then now all of a sudden I'm starting to question things." And Sharon got it down to a very manageable 23 pages of individual, understandable legal language, and that's, I think that ties the whole thing together. Is your legal has to make sense to you. It's got to make sense to your clients. And that has to be driven from somebody who knows what it is that you're talking about. So getting into specifics, the world is changing. I mean, Sharon, one of the things that you just said is our own IP. That could translate to an NFT. How do we manage that? But let's get more basic than that for things that we are already in place. Good legal is really like insurance in some ways. And so when we look at ADA compliance, let's start there for websites. Let's talk with our agency owners about what they are responsible for in terms of that.
Well, I think that the first thing that every agency who does website development, website design should understand is that the engagements you're entering into with your clients, they are contracts and they can say whatever you want about ADA compliance. You do not, as an agency, have to take on the responsibility, certainly legally, but even ethically, if you don't want to, if that's outside your zone of genius and you don't want to make any representations about accessibility, you don't have to do that. But if you're not going to do that, just understand that the trend is going the other way. Clients are increasingly expecting it. And so either build that capacity in-house or have a key. There are many good key third-party vendors you can ally with that will help you with that issue. And the other thing I would say is that this is a particularly challenging issue because there actually are no federal requirements regarding accessibility. There are standards that are put forth, and there are best practices, but there is no federal statute or case law that says thou shalt have the following. And so it's a bit of a gray area, which makes everybody uncomfortable. So I would say, as to your contracts with your clients, take a position internally as an agency on what type of compliance services you're going to offer for accessibility. If it's that you're going to introduce them to a key vendor who will help, or you're going to engage one on their behalf who will partner with you to deliver that website, that's one thing. If you're going to assume no responsibility whatsoever for ADA compliance, you need to put that disclaimer clearly in your agreement and make certain that the client understands it. So that's being proactive. Where a lot of agencies, unfortunately, are stuck right now, and I feel badly for them because this has just sort of emerged surprise to some of us, is they're getting calls from their clients for whom they've already sites who are getting some of these demands or lawsuits from third parties about accessibility. And they want to know what to do now, right? Our contract is sort of vague or doesn't speak to the issue, and what's our real responsibility here? I guess my high level feedback on that would be a helper to your client, even if you're not currently billing them. If you haven't taken on any responsibility, then everything you do will be a value add to that client, including matching them up with a third party technology solution or vendor who can help them get more compliant. If what they need is just sort of support in terms of understanding what features or functions of the website might be considered accessible, you can provide them with that information. But beyond that, it's rare that we've seen the claim come all the way down to the agency level so far. So be a helper to your former clients. And then if you've taken on responsibility for doing some of these things and you haven't done them, then you're going to have to get involved either by remediation or by helping your client resolve the claim. And that's when you call your insurance carrier to help get their assistance, helping you help your client.
It's great advice because you mentioned, it's not yet that fully legal issue, but it could be a moral issue, and often moral issues become legal issues when your client isn't accessible by a particular portion of their constituency. That's going to become a problem that they may not have anticipated. And so I think us anticipating that for them and guiding them through that is probably the right track. I think that's great.
Particularly if the online real estate that you're helping create for your clients is like an e-commerce site where accessibility gaps are even a bigger, even more likely to be sort of a challenge to address. Or if you're in the hospitality industry, and so you should already know about ADA because you understand that physical spaces have to be compliant. So why isn't your website? So I would just say if you're in that situation, plan for the future. But if you're in the situation where you have a current or past client whose site is not accessible, just be a helper, and read your contract first before you decide what kind of help you're willing to provide.
You just brought up contracts, which is something that I don't want to take a big pivot here, but contracts give me anxiety. And the only reason why they give me anxiety because there's a lot of negotiation associated with them. And like Tim said, he went from 70 pages to 23 pages. Are there keys that you can give us or words of advice and wisdom on how to make that negotiation contract process with our client better, maybe easier? You just talked about legal being a profit center. Is this part of that, is like being able to help that process maybe go a little bit more smooth for our agency owners out there?
I think so. It's a great question. I think that this may sound a tiny bit self-serving, and I don't mean it that way, but honestly, the best thing any agency can do to help itself in the contract negotiation process generally is to make sure you always have your own version of a current, up-to-date master service agreement internally as an agency. And the reason I say that is because it's not uncommon to get pushback over the years. I've had this conversation many times with agency owners. Well, we don't really worry about that too much because we work with the kind of clients who want us to sign their contract. And so we never really present them with our document because they use procurement or they use legal and they require that we sign their agreement. Okay, maybe that's true. Or maybe it's a story you're telling yourself because you haven't gotten to the table first with your agreement. And so you don't know how they would react. So that's the first thing. Secondly, it definitely sets the table differently for the negotiations if your client understands that you as an agency have thought through what your minimum standards are, what's important to you as an agency, what matters to you on a business and a legal front. So having your own MSA can help you there as well. Third is your checklist. It's your benchmarking tool for when you get an agreement from the client and they expect you to sign their version of where you can spot issues that need to be negotiated. So I would think that's the first way to turn your legal document into a profit center because you're going to make better deals, you're going to have better leverage, and I think you're going to be perceived differently at the negotiating table by the client's negotiators when they know you've taken the time to think the legal aspects of the relationship through in advance.
Yeah, without a doubt, and it helps you stay in scope. So your MSA is designed to help you determine that scope, and if you don't have an MSA, then every new agreement is a new reality for your team, and that becomes extremely difficult, hard to scale that way.
Right, I agree with you, Tim. And no two deals end up looking similar, and that's it's fine to have outliers if that's a good business decision to make, but when you are delegating contract negotiation and execution to your key team members, they need to understand where the agency stands on all the main issues that every MSA addresses. And pricing and billing are only part of them, right? There are other main issues that need to be dealt with in every master service agreement, like the intellectual property ownership. Not only who's going to own it, but when does the transfer occur? And spoiler alert, it should never be before the agency gets paid. And things like exclusivity, things like publicity rights. Are you going to be able to display the logos and samples of the work that you've done for the client so that you can demonstrate your genius to potential other clients
Okay.
in the mix. Non-solicitation of your talent. There are a lot of standard provisions that have financial implications in addition to legal implications, and so you want to make certain that those are consistently addressed, and that is a way to make your client relationships more profitable, and also probably to extract better financial deals out of your clients as well.
Yeah, is there a I'm just listening to this and kind of thinking to myself that there are probably a lot of people navigating how to find the right lawyer or the right team to represent their agency. And part of my thing that was coming around is like, I see you and Tim, Sharon, having this really great, like, you guys seem like you work as a team, like you probably really understand the entrepreneur mind, and that's really great. Is there any kind of benchmarks that people should be looking for to go, okay, I need to figure out the right fit, a right lawyer for my firm? Is there some kind of words of wisdom that you would give them while they're searching?
I think trust is key. I think you have to work with somebody who you trust to have your best interests at heart. Do are the attorneys on my team and our clients agree on every? I mean, do we never debate a project? Of course not. There are sometimes when um, clients just decide to take business risks, and they may not be the decision that we would make from a legal perspective, but it is their decision to make, and then our role becomes advising them of any risk. And so I think you have to have an attorney who's willing to help you understand the risks even when you want to take them. I'm not saying I've never threatened to lay down in the road in front of a client who wanted to do something, because I've had a couple of those conversations over the years, but we're all adults here, right? Our job um, is to just help you understand the implications of what you're doing. So get a lawyer who you trust to do that for you. Um, get a lawyer whose interests are aligned with your interests in terms of how they scope the projects for you, how they price your work. We are strong believers in flat fee work at the firm, because I don't want a client ever feeling bashful about thinking the meter's going to be on when they need to call and ask a question about a project we're working on for them.
I love that. So we're in the service business like you are, with professional services, and I literally refuse to charge people for time. I refuse to buy things on time. Your time, if it takes you 15 minutes to do something that I need, or if it takes you 5 hours, that's completely your skill set. But I'm paying for an outcome. And that's what we try and do here. And that was so attractive in the conversation with Sharon, is it wasn't, that fear, the fear of legal is two things, really. You don't understand, and you don't know how long it takes. And so consequently, that clock can run. And when you
Yep.
know that there's a relative outcome on the other side of a decision you're making, it makes it so much easier. And then the expertise at that legal firm in your lane can allow them to facilitate those things quicker.
There's a minority of situations in which nobody can actually adequately predict how much energy a project's going to take, and so maybe 5 to 10% of our work has to be done on an hourly basis. But I don't like it, and clients don't like it, and so agency owners out there, get a client or get a law firm whose billing you understand, and whose interests align with yours when it comes to billing. If you can also find one that understands your space, your industry, that's tremendous. Sometimes you're going to need more than one law firm in your corner. We have lots of agency clients. We're a national firm. We're virtual. We're national. We're not going to be your lease review law firm. We're not your employee retirement plan setup law
Yeah.
firm. Can we make some suggestions and steer you? Yeah, but those are state specific legal questions, and those are not examples of the kinds of things we do. And ask a lot of questions. Don't be intimidated about asking a lot of questions, and work with a law firm who you feel comfortable asking those questions of.
Can we extend that now from how to choose a law firm, which is a great question, into the relationship that your agency has with vendors, with 1099s, with, if you outsource work at your agency, what does that relationship look like legally on a high level?
Right. Well, I mean, I think the mistake that most agency owners make when they do this, and every agency we work with uses freelance or contract talent to some degree or another. It's just a fact of life for agencies, and they err on the side of in some situations, making the contractor or the freelancer such a part of the team that that the line is completely blurred between employee and 1099 third party contractor. There's no such thing as a contract employee. So please, if any of you listening are using that verbiage, please stop. It's one or the other. And if you're a contractor, or an agency owner who engages with contractors to deliver client work, be aware of the IRS having the contractor pick its own time and method of delivery of work. So long as they're meeting your deadlines to your clients, making them clear about what they can and cannot represent about the agency outside the walls of the agency. Have them use their own equipment, and having a written contract. If you don't have something in writing with them that says you own their work, you may not be in compliance with your own client agreement. So for lots of reasons, having that written agreement that covers IP, that covers confidentiality, covers non-solicitation. In other words, you, contractor, do not go and work directly with our client without participation. So there are many things to touch on in a contract but that is the main instrument you need in your toolkit as an agency, is an independent contractor agreement if you use any third-party talent whatsoever.
We'd love to end it on kind of a big thing that our agency owners can go do. What is something actionable that they do? But the question I have is just very simply, I think agency owners and entrepreneurs have a lot of blind spots. We're very focused. We drive, we go really quickly. What are some things that we are not paying attention to right now in our business that from your perspective, we absolutely should be paying attention to? I would love to know that from just kind of where you're sitting.
I think the first thing a lot of agency owners don't pay attention to is to pay attention to the IP that you are creating at your agency, and think hard about ways that you can productize it and turn it into additional revenue streams. That's got financial implications, of course, for your agency. There are specific legal things you want to do along the way to make certain you are protecting those assets while you're building them. Many agencies choose to niche, which is a super smart strategy in my personal opinion. When you have that opportunity, think about the IP you're creating in terms of delivering that in a standard way and how you could package and productize it. They're not sweeping the corners of their agency to think about how they can turn things they've already created into new revenue streams. So that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is be on top of the trends evolving in terms of negotiating client agreements. We are seeing an increase in demands for exclusivity amongst agencies. We see creative attempts at designing billing language in the contract. So be careful about that, and make certain that you've got a legal toolkit that is consistent and that you take a look at from time to time to be certain it reflects your actual practices as an agency. Every agency, there are key legal documents they should have in their toolkit handy and ready, and there should be a very small team of people in every agency who's responsible for making certain those contracts get signed and that they evolve when they need to evolve.
I'll take those.
Incredible.
Those are my top three.
I'm so happy that I got a chance to I'm writing notes. So I'm assuming everybody at home is also writing notes, but I'm like selfishly just writing things down. So Tim.
Thanks, Marcus.
Yeah, no problem.
Sharon, I thought this was going to be terrific, and I sure felt it was. So I thank you so much for your time.
It's my absolute pleasure. I so enjoyed the conversation as well, and thanks for having me.
Tim, I was wrong. Yeah, well, I'm blown away. I'm paying a lot more attention. I took a bunch of notes. I'm sure that everybody else did. But hey, if you missed it or you want to go back and listen to it, go over to agency-talk.com, where you're going to get not only you can re-listen to this as many times as you want. You can absolutely just hone in on Tim's voice if you just want to, kind of have like a melodic
You just
meditation kind of
if
thing.
you're
But more importantly, please connect with Sharon. Sharon's information's there. She's got a kick ass podcast. She's also got really good resources for you as an agency owner. So be sure to check her out. You'll find her at agency-talk.com. Tim, I'm so excited to put your reputation on the line. I'll be doing it every time that we have a guest. And so make sure you tune in Agency Talk listeners where Tim's rep is on the line. How do you feel about that, Tim?
I just want to thank Sharon for keeping my reputation at least temporarily intact.
Wonderful. Well, until next time, Agency Talk listeners, amazing agency owners, get yourself a lawyer. Get yourself a profit center, and we'll talk to you next time. And thanks for listening.